Round 2 of the IGC Zuerich Chess Challenge featured the game we'd all been looking forward to. The number 1 in the world, Magnus Carlsen, played the number 2 in the world, Levon Aronian. Aronian in tremendous form, having convincingly won recently in the super strong Vikings tournament, and many people feel that he is a future challenger to Carlsen for the World Championship title. After 20 moves, they'd arrived at a really complex position. You can see many pieces still on the board. Both players, happy with this complex situation. No one backing down, no one playing for a draw. And, well, I think it's the position on the queen side which is of real interest. You can see here, this white pawn has advanced up the board, and that cramps this pawn here. So Carlsen would very much like to bring his queen over to put more pressure on this pawn. The problem is, if he tries this straight away, then Aronian counterattacks with this move, and if the rook is able to take this pawn, for example after queen takes pawn, then that rook would threaten the bishop, and it's a little bit unpleasant. And in the long term, this bishop has a bit of pressure against this pawn as well. It's a very difficult position. So back to the position they reached. Here, in order to stop this rook move, Carlsen played the bishop to this square. But that does mean that there's less pressure on this pawn. Aronian played now an excellent move. The knight wasn't doing too much on this square, but now it floats around and is ready to perhaps move into this square. For example, after queen here, this could be a nice square for the queen, putting more pressure here. But in this case, black exchanges and plays the knight into c5, this lovely square, looking here, and that's rather unpleasant for white. So once again, Carlsen had to have a bit of a think, and he moved the bishop back just to support that knight. And black could take here again and play the knight in. It's not quite as good as the last variation. But instead, Aronian played this pawn move, preparing, under some circumstances, to bring the queen into the corner of the board to put more pressure on this diagonal, supporting the bishop. Aronian was playing so quickly and so fluently at this time. And it was actually Carlsen who was running a bit short of time, and this is a very difficult position for white. But Carlsen came up with a very interesting counter. Rather surprising move. Played the bishop here. Now, good idea to open up the line of the rook again. The problem is this allows this bishop exchange. Now, on the plus side, it's going to prevent a knight coming into this square. On the downside, it gives black this passed pawn, which has some potential. And also these pawns are doubled. And Aronian made Carlsen aware of the weakness of this pawn straight away by moving the queen up, attacking the pawn. And if Carlsen falls back on the defensive here, you can see this is the right moment for black to move forward. White's pieces have to retreat. Black advances again, and perhaps this knight will come in here. This is already very unpleasant for white. It's very difficult to see where the counterplay is coming. So Carlsen played here. It's a good move. Forces an exchange of bishops, and perhaps prepares to bring the knight in here. And if that pawn is taken, then white counterattacks. So Carlsen is not backing down here. And, well, there are some unpleasant threats here, obviously to the knight, but perhaps later with the knight coming in here as well. So back to this position. Aronian played very sensibly, covering this square with his knight. And now Carlsen took off that potentially dangerous pawn, but this allows this pawn to drop. The knight's attacked, so it has to come back. Now material is still even, and Aronian has some pressure here. Carlsen had to retreat the queen, and the rook came across. Now you can see black certainly has a little bit of advantage here. This pawn is slightly weak. This pawn is also on its own. At the moment it's defended, and well, both pawns are defended, but there's a bit of pressure and the queen is active. But Carlsen just sat here. Actually, it turns out there's very little that black can do to increase the pressure on the position. Aronian just improved the position of his king. That gives his king a little escape square, and Carlsen did the same. And here, I mean, black could try and move like queen here to perhaps bring the queen back, but actually then it's white's turn to pressurize this pawn, and actually black has no advantage here. So going back to this position, Aronian decided to simplify. He took this pawn, and well, he hasn't actually won a pawn here, because now it's white's turn to shoot down the board and take the pawn. So pawns are now even, material is even, and after this, now this knight can't be taken because queen takes queen, and white now forces a draw. Queen takes pawn, it's all forced. This knight is taken, so white is a knight down, but now black's pieces are too far away from the king to defend, and after this it's a draw by perpetual check. The black king cannot escape the checks, and so the players agreed to a draw. A really tense struggle between the two players, but I don't think either of them really made any mistakes, and a very interesting game, but they were very well matched for each other. Let me show you one more game. The game between Vishy and Hikaru Nakamura. Now in this position, it seems to me that Anand has the white pieces, that Anand is actually doing pretty well. One possibility is to take off this dangerous knight and play the rook here, potentially opening up the position with e5, and Anand also has this break on this side of the board to disturb black's king position. This is quite dangerous. I think certainly an easier position for white to play than black. Instead, Anand played d4, advancing the pawn. Now at first I thought this was very strong, because if black exchanges pawns, white captures with the knight, and now there are all kinds of interesting threats. So that perhaps moving the queen over here to hit the knight. Again, this pawn break is interesting for white. But Hikaru Nakamura now thought for over half an hour on this one move and came up with an excellent counterattack. Just when it looked like Anand might be getting the initiative, Nakamura sacrificed the knight. Now he has two pawns for it, and white's king's a little bit exposed. But, well, at first I thought this didn't look very serious for white, because, well, if the queen comes over, the knight can retreat, and, well, there doesn't seem to be any particular danger to white's king. But here I think this is a very worrying move for white. The bishop pins the knight, and it's difficult for white to escape from that pin. And I can understand that Anand wished to avoid that, and instead, in this position, gave back material. He took this pawn, the queen came to the side, threatens the queen and threatens this mate. There is a defence, the knight drops back covering, now the queen covers here, but now Nakamura took the rook back, and the position is stabilised. Black has a rook against bishop and knight, but of course Black has 2 extra pawns. Now, perhaps this is a rough balance, but in practice, I think this is a far easier position for Black to play than White. The problem is that on this side of the board, there are no open files. The king blocks that pawn. There's no real attack. On the other side of the board, White's king is exposed. Let's see how Nakamura dealt with this one. Now, here is the moment when perhaps Anand could have cut across Nakamura's plans. Perhaps he should have taken... it opens files against the king, but he can probably get away with it by moving his king to the side. Instead, Anand fell back on the defensive, and this was a fatal decision. Now Nakamura rolled forward. You can see this 6th rank is opening up for the rook to pressurise the king. The queen falls back. The problem is these minor pieces don't really have anything to do. And it's really instructive how Nakamura built up the attack. First of all, the pawn advances. He wants to get rid of this knight, and that'll mean the king is more exposed. If he exchanges queens, then Anand has a chance. Of course, Nakamura avoided this. And now watch the final attack. This is like a boxing match where one guy gets the upper hand and just keeps slugging away, and the other guy's forced against the ropes. So the knight was attacked. Now the queen is attacked here. The queen has to move. The queen is attacked again. The queen has to move. Now the queen, Black's queen, comes in, checking the king. King has to move. And now the final blow. You know, it's just White going backwards. And now this is a killing sacrifice. If it's taken with the queen, then that's checkmate. Anand took the rook with the pawn. But now the queen comes in, pinning the knight. The knight is threatened. The queen came back to defend. And after this move, Anand resigned. His queen is attacked. If it moves up, then that's another pawn going. Rook here is another threat, winning the queen. And if the rook comes over to defend, then this is a very neat winning move. Basically, the queen is attacked, and it can't keep hold of the knight and the rook. And of course, well, there's nothing to be done. Queen takes, knight check, and that's it. Once again, we see it's a safe king trumps an exposed king, an exploded king actually. So there we go. Great victory from Nakamura. And if Nakamura can keep pace with Carlsen and Aronian, it'll be very interesting to see what happens when he gets to the final day, when it's the rapid play game. So after 2 rounds, Carlsen, Aronian and Nakamura all have 1.5 points. In round 3 on Saturday, Aronian faces Gelfand, and Nakamura has White against Magnus Carlsen. Watch out for it.